Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Robert Baylor, Director of Communications at NUCA. Welcome to our latest Webinar Wednesday, sponsored by NUCA National Partners CNA. We're going to try something different with this webinar. Instead of having a guest presenter discussing congressional action or the latest legal news, we want to hear from the industry experts. That's you, our members. Each of you on today's webinar has a unique perspective on the pandemic emergency and the government's response to it. We'd like for you to share what is happening in your local area and your company's response to it. Businesses in our industry don't lend themselves to teleworking like those in office environments. So we want to hear from you about how you and your crews are practicing social distancing on a website, how essential business travel is being undertaken day to day for utility repair work, and if you'll be applying for the several federal loan programs now being offered. Those programs are the topic I'll lead off with for this discussion. Those $350 billion programs began last Friday. But banks across the nation were scrambling that day to figure out how to process a rush of eager applicants. Bankers were also reporting problems with the Small Business Administration's online loan portal. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said Monday that $1.8 billion in loans had already been processed, but other associations, including ours, are asking the administration and Congress to address the problems in the new program and consider adding more aid in future legislation. That next phase of legislation might arrive as soon as tomorrow, according to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. The legislation may provide another $250 billion in relief. One D.C. business lobbyist remarked the bill will need to focus on helping businesses stay afloat while people are encouraged not to work. A U.S. Chamber of Commerce report said 4 in 10 small businesses said they are less than 6 months from permanently shutting down, and nearly a quarter say they have only 2 months or less to keep things going. We've heard from Washington for the last several weeks about this emergency. Now we want to hear from you. First question is, if you've applied for an SBA loan under this program, what has your experience been with your lender? They've given out 1.8 million in loans so far. I know as well too that I was reading a Wall Street Journal piece this morning. Congress, a lot of businesses have applied for the emergency grants, but so far these applicants still appear to be waiting for the money. And I know my own experience with Washington right now, they're swamped with probably a couple 100,000 small businesses desperate for some sort of money to tide them over, or as well too with the larger loans, the EIDL funds, which are addressing a significant financial loss. They're having to process those as well too.
Brenda, NUCA, Pennsylvania.
Brenda, welcome. Welcome. Can you, you'll be the first of many because I know everyone's eager to jump in. We were discussing yesterday in terms of what you're experiencing up in Pennsylvania. Can you share some of the stories that you've heard from other members with this program and with our industry?
So with the loan program, my president just completed his documentation. He said it on early Sunday. And another contractor friend of his had completed his apparently at the same time. Fortunately, they both apparently are going through the same SBA bank. After Billy is my president's name, after he had put his application in, he said his friend sent him a document and said, you know, hey, did you fill out this Excel sheet? And he's there like, well, that wasn't part of my application. And he said, so somewhere between when he applied, the bank put another document in from till the time his friend put his in. So the banks could be changing this stuff from person to person. So he just took that form that his friend sent him, completed it, and resent it into the bank under a separate, entry, basically. So I don't even think that the banks are sure what exactly is happening.
Brenda, reading about yesterday, the Treasury Department issued a new guidance that's going to help our guys out a lot. I've added the link to a news story and also as well to the official Treasury guidance on our pandemic flu recovery page at nuca.com/recovery. Some of the other associations in town and ourselves as well too, we're pressuring Treasury to essentially give better guidance to the lenders. And having worked at one time in my life with the American Bankers Association, I know how long it takes. Excuse me, I don't have a cough button on this thing. how long it takes to actually issue new rules from Washington that end up going down and are interpreted by the banks. My guess is that these banks are falling back on their prior guidance, which in some ways isn't applicable in terms of the situation right now, and certainly not what Congress intended with these two loan programs.
Brenda, this is Doug at NUCA. What form was that again that the bank asked him to, or that your friend was referring to?
I think it was some type of an Excel sheet. I think everybody has to come to the realization. I think the banks have not done this yet. They're so used to doing loans that they want you to fill out all this detailed stuff like you're doing a loan. And this is not really a loan until you say it's a loan at the tail end after you apply. And you have the money in hand, then you give them the detailed information. And they're trying to do it all up front, I believe. And so it kind of makes it different. We've got somebody here on, it says his microphone's not working. So I will just type a chat message. I don't know if you see that, Bob.
Go ahead and read it out. This is informal. This is a conversation amongst members.
So it says, this is Joe from Underground Utilities in Monroeville, Ohio. We have applied for the loan, and our bank notified us over the weekend that it has been approved. We're waiting for the next steps. That's a positive. Yoo-hoo.
That's the thing. Well, the other thing, reading some of the news coverage this morning, other companies have done the same thing. They've gone through the first set of hoops and all that. So it's like, all right, you've done that. When is the money showing up? And in reading some of the other news programs about it, other lenders are doing it. They're not quite sure when the money is showing up. And I know the president, in terms of reading what his advisors say, they'd like this money out in the next 2 weeks. Because we got people have payroll to meet, they've got obligations to end up fulfilling. And this is just for the basic tide over loan. The larger, the significant disaster ones, those are much larger figures. Although one figure I saw was only up to $10,000.
Bob, there's Lisa sent chat out to everyone too. She said apparently they were temporarily shut down. Something about accepting new applications, but that ours was accepted. So apparently theirs was accepted as well. The bank, I'm assuming, said that they were hoping the money would be available on Monday, and then by Friday they still haven't seen it. So
and this has that. Thank you, Brenda, and thank you everyone for jumping in and being proactive with the chat feature. I mean, this is like a lot of other government programs we've experienced, and it's something of this magnitude, this quickly. There's going to be glitches, problems, and that's one of the things I hate to say. It's just going to be expected in this first week, but there's no reason why we can't let them know. Here's the problems we're having. What can you do to end up fixing it? Because obviously they're the ones in charge. They're the ones who are dispersing the money. And ultimately, this is going to be a conversation between the Treasury Department, the SBA, and a lot of small banks out there who are used to loaning money in a certain way because it's money. You don't just hand it out to anyone. They don't realize that this is a different program. The government is trying to loan it out to everyone within certain parameters and all that. So thank you as well too. Again, if we have others on the line.
This is Kurt Young.
Kurt, thank you for joining us.
Hey, yeah, we filled out the paperwork now 3 times, and the big stumbling block they seem to have is, I have 3 different entities here, but the one we're trying to use is an LLC, and they don't want to recognize the partners because we don't take a normal paycheck. And so,
Kurt, where are you calling from?
I'm in South Bend, Indiana.
Okay, thank you.
So, my bank is doing the best they can with the information they're getting, but it seems to be a big roadblock.
Are you going to go back? You said you've already done it 3 times. You're going to go back for a 4th one, or is there going to be a point where you're going to be a little discouraged?
Well, I'm going to keep plugging away, but at some point, when you get attorneys and accountants involved, it may cost more than what I'm going to get.
And a very, very well taken point. Very, very, very well taken point. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you very much. And as well, too, if you can identify where you're from, we know certain parts of the country are probably handling this better. Other parts of the country are probably doing worse at it. The SBA is broken into, I think it's 7 different districts. And of course, once those districts, they start talking to the various SBA approved lenders as well too. Is there someone else who'd like to be brave and click on the mute feature and share your story?
Hey, Bob, Brenda asked if anyone has actually been denied because they're not a member of SBA.
Right. Has anyone been denied because they're not a member of that SBA bank? I've seen that in other news stories as well too. That's you know, it's heartening to see that people are actually getting through. That's very good. Jack, why don't you put the second question up? This is one that I ended up hearing last week. The last relief bill also topped up state unemployment funds. Every employee going on unemployment receives a percentage of their salary and now will receive an extra $600 each week. We already have a labor shortage, and the person I was talking to last week brought up the question, which I thought was fascinating. How do you think that extra stimulus payment from the federal government is going to affect your ability to call your workforce back? I mean, they might be making more on unemployment than they are in terms of wages. Has anyone experienced that or perhaps even pondered it? Well, this we're hearing from our vice chairman. I'll read his statement. He's having some problems unmuting his phone. He applied for his loan on Monday. He's in Nebraska. It was a very simple application that took less than 30 minutes to complete. I spoke to our bank this morning and it has been approved. Well done. That's terrific. They have some details to iron out on their end before they give us the money, but they said that we would get the full amount that we applied for. He was happy with the program. It seems to be working good on our end in Nebraska. Does anyone else want to jump in on it? Because I know we have some other questions. Keep everyone sort of thinking. If we get more people jumping in and sort of sharing their stories as well too, it certainly helps with the exchange.
I'll just mention, this is a good opportunity to kind of stress the best practices of having a really good relationship with your bank. I know it's probably talking to the choir on that issue, but I know talking with Ryan on side on this, he said, his relationship with his bank is what's been key through a lot of this and being able to communicate directly with his banker that he has a personal relationship with. So that might be just, I'm wondering in the audience if, they're experiencing because they have a good relationship with their banker, if it's easier or if it's been a tougher issue because they do not have a good relationship with their banker. And just a plug, those banks should be members of NUCA as well. So make sure you recruit them.
Thank you, Doug. An excellent point.
Hi, this is Lisa from Seattle, Washington.
Lisa, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
I want to address the thing about the unemployment and the $600 from the federal government. We have actually had employees, they're on standby. We have partial essential work and partial non-essential work. So about 75% of our staff has been put on standby. In Washington State, you have to be able to be available for work if you're on standby. But they are grumbling about if they lose their 600 plus, some of them are making more on unemployment than they made working full time. We have tried to communicate that once you add in our benefits, because if you're on full unemployment, you don't get the benefits like 401k match and a medical and dental, that they're actually ahead of the game to be on standby and be part of the workforce. So part of it has just been educating them. One of the employees that was very upset, I sent a long email explaining it and actually did the math for him and showed him he was actually like $350 ahead staying on standby or coming back to work part-time because we can do partial work. And that if they deny work, if they don't come in for standby, they can be terminated and they will get no unemployment.
That's a very good point. Well, thank you. Let's jump on if people are finished with this question. Zach, can you end up pushing it to question number 3? Well, with this, the question is, what is the effect of the stay-at-home policies been for your business? If your subcontractors can't show up on a job site, that's going to affect your delivery schedule and cash flow. How are you adjusting to that? You finding certain ideas working better than others? Or at this point, are we just, maybe only 3 weeks into this? I mean, sort of long-term effects from this are they haven't manifested themselves yet. Certain industries, such as the restaurant industry, being slammed. We certainly have projects that are scheduled on a certain timeline. There's always a bit of adjustment in how these projects are fulfilled. But that time, that slack time is generally relatively small, less than 10%. And we're getting, I imagine, at certain points, we're getting close to that 10% if we haven't already fallen over it. Is anyone having noticing the stay-at-home policies? What's happening with in your area? I heard someone trying to get on.
No, that's from Indiana again, and I'm probably going to speak for a lot of people in the northern clime. The longer we got to sit idle, we have a nice project at a big manufacturing plant, but nobody's allowed on site. The longer we sit idle, when it does get going again, we're going to be slammed with overtime, and that affects our bottom line. And so I don't care what happens, we're going to be going backwards this year at a phenomenal rate.
Oh, Kurt, yeah, this is, I mean, besides the obviously the disaster, the public health aspect of it, when we end up putting a nation's economy, our nation's economy, $11 trillion economy, maybe not even to reverse, it's just we're not even moving forward. There are going to be effects from this lasting throughout the rest of the year, if not longer as well, too. Not only in terms of your own labor costs, but also all the cleanup mess that's going to come from this as well, too. You mentioned, someone mentioned earlier, lawyers and accountants, those costs are going to have to be factored in as well, too.
Yeah, our overhead's going up, our labor costs are going up, all in the sake of trying to keep people employed. And at some point, it becomes counterproductive, and the employer goes backwards, where the employee maybe eventually gets whole.
Yeah, the administration has a very sticky mess ahead of them. I mean, they have that dual mandate of trying to preserve people's lives and their health, but at the same time, you're going to get to a point where it's just going to be counterproductive. I know they're in terms of their time frame. The president first said it was going to be Easter, which I thought was, in my own opinion, was going to be a little aggressive. I knew he was going to make it. He was going to have to change that. He's now changed it to the end of the month, April 30th. Other states as well, too, here in Virginia as well. We've got it until June 10th. Now, these dates can always be rescinded back, or that they can be changed. But still, I mean, one of the people I ended up trusting was thinking, coming from the White House, was looking towards the middle of May in terms of when, the order's going to be lifted to be able to get back to work. So that's still a month away. Let's go with that. Yeah, I mean, we're all going to get slammed in terms of we come back, we try to restart an economy. Again, something we've never done before. Not even during World War II did we end up going through this. There was an adjustment of a couple months when we changed from civilian production to war production. And then when World War II ended, they had done about 3 years of prior planning to go, what happens at that date? What industries need to be brought back? Who needs to be employed? How do we end up releasing the troops? And that sort of thing as well, too. This thing's all being done on the fly, essentially. They're trying to figure it out using prior disaster planning, but the disaster planning through FEMA and the other departments. Now that's always either regional or it's obviously a very short term. This is something they've never actually done before, and we're all on this horrible learning curve as well too.
Bob?
Sure.
Kind of just a question for the group as you're talking about the stay-at-home policies. I'm also curious as to if anybody has had any issues with the essential workforce ordinances and or mandates from local authorities to, we put out a sample letter that employers might want to look at having their legal counsel buy off on to carry to their employees for essential job sites. I'm just wondering if anybody's had any issues. I talked with Lauren, our chairman-elect, who essentially has all his employees carrying this letter, and had one employee get stopped, showed him the letter, and the officer said, "Thank you very much, go on your way." So I'm just wondering if there's any stories on that people might want to share.
Doug, this is Kathy Blackman, and our chapter was one that kind of first brought that to your attention. We did have one employee who was stopped. That was kind of like the first day, and it was not in Duval County, which is where we are, but in a neighboring county. In our county, they said that you weren't going to need to carry the letter, but a lot of our guys do work in surrounding counties, so we kind of just sent it out as a recommendation that, they have it just in case. To go back to the previous question about the effect of stay-at-home policies, as far as I'm aware, all the members that I have talked to are still working like flat out. So it's been good for, I don't know if it's partially because Florida works year round and, construction's crazy here or what, but they have all been able to work as far as I'm aware.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, Bob, this is Ryan Kinning.
And welcome.
Can you hear me?
Thank you.
All right. You can finally hear me.
I can finally hear you. Welcome. I'm glad you're on it.
Yeah, the effect of the stay-at-home, I'm from Nebraska, and we're one of 5 states that doesn't actually have that in place right now. We don't have the order to stay home, but a lot of people are doing it. As far as I know, everybody here is still working as far as the construction companies, but we're seeing some of our vendors that are trying to have people work from home, and it's holding up deliveries and stuff like that. That's probably the area that we see it the most is through, the pipe supply houses, not really on ready mix or anything like that, but any type of deliveries like that, material deliveries that you get, we're seeing a little bit of effect with that.
Ryan, going back to the first question, when you applied for your loan, did they give you a time frame when you would actually get the money? You're in a smaller market than larger.
They just said that it would be fast. They said it would be quick. When I talked to the bank this morning, he said that they just have a few things between them and the government to work out. And he said that's with everybody that they've got, but they've got the official approval for the amount that we requested and everything. I don't know what those details are. I think, when I talked to them when I was filling out the application, they were still trying to figure out their role in determining how much we could get, if they were making the determination or if they had to send that in to the SBA or whoever to get approval on that prior to writing the loan. So I think it took the bankers by surprise, and I know they were pretty inundated when I talked to them on Friday. But they really didn't know what they were getting into either. So they were taking applications, but and they committed to following through with them. But I think that's where they're at right now, is just trying to resolve exactly how this is all going to work on their end. So.
Right. And I could see certain banks being better equipped for this than others. And as well, too, also they're also looking for guidance from DC, from SBA, and also Treasury. And I know those two departments are trying to figure this out as well, too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad you had a successful
It came in fast. It came in fast. So, nobody had any time, before April 3rd to really get it figured out. So I think they're still in that process right now.
Well, we're about the half an hour mark. I didn't want to have this webinar take up too much of people's time. You all got busy lives, and I know I've got to get back to writing 2 reports as well, too. Are there any other questions people like to bring up? We had 3 questions that we started out with. I know this was a sort of a listening webinar. Are there any things that you have that you'd like to ask us here at NUCA or the members on the call at large?
So Brenda asked if who has developed a COVID-19 safety plan.
I know that we have our pandemic flu suggestion or sample plans on our website. I hope people have been taking advantage of those. But I mean, there's also other public health plans and other things as well too that companies have used. Has anyone developed one they'd like to share with us? There's not, at least for this particular call.
This is Ryan Kinning again. Our company took one that's based off of what NUCA's was, and then kind of that and a combination of what our insurance company gave us also. So it's kind of a combination of those two.
Did you find the 2 plans had a lot in common, or there were They're okay. Okay.
Very similar.
And was there anything specific you guys maybe put in your plan regarding masks? I know that's kind of
No.
been the hot topic the last 2 days. Just curious if there's anything that you guys put in there specifically on masks.
No. Ours was more of a lot of it was obligation to come to work. Basically, you don't have to be here. You're welcome to come here. You know, what you need to do, you know, if you are showing symptoms and this and that, here's what you need to do if you need to stay at home or any of that. But no, not on the direct I guess it's not really on the safety side. It's more of a operations manual for this, you know, like in our employee handbook. But no, nothing with masks or anything like that.
So this is Brenda from NUCA, Pennsylvania. One of the things I was just talking with one of my contractors about today is that even after we get over the peak of this event, okay, they're already finding in China that everyone is like going back like it's normal, and they're afraid of a second wave. So I think that we're going to have to develop some type of a plan in the long term to protect our workforce and their families so that we don't go back and have another peak. And I think you're going to be doing this for a while, probably until we get a vaccine.
You know, I've heard that as well too, in terms of a second wave, like other pandemics have done. That's, you know, it seems a lot of the things they're doing right now to the government are reactionary as opposed to going forward. But I think that this has been such a large event, certainly an unprecedented one, that I could see the thinking ahead part not necessarily being a prime aspect in terms of how we're looking at this. Are there any other questions? I know we're getting towards the end here. We didn't want this to be an hour-long chat. If there aren't any other questions, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Information is going to play a large part in overcoming the challenges that we've discussed. And at NUCA, we're committed to keeping everyone in our membership fully informed and engaged. Our next webinar is going to be in early May. We're still working on that particular topic. If you thought this was useful in terms of sharing information, or you'd like to end up giving it another go in terms of sharing this kind of member information amongst what we have here at your national headquarters in Washington, Fairfax rather, or Fairfax Station in terms of where I'm at home today, please let me know. I'm available to everyone at the association, on the Director of Communications. My email is robert@nuca.com. Please send me a note in terms of either your thoughts on this, or perhaps as well too a possible topic for a future webinar. It's a neat platform. I like playing on WebEx, and every time I end up doing this, I get better at it. Thank you for your time today to join us for Webinar Wednesday and for supporting NUCA. Our next webinar is going to be back on a regular schedule, like I said, the first Wednesday of every month, which means the next NUCA Webinar Wednesday is going to be held Wednesday, May 8th at 2 o'clock Eastern. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Please enjoy the rest of your week.